Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving deep into a story that's been kind of all over the headlines. The tragic death of Agastya Chauhan, the Indian YouTube stunt rider, known as Pro Rider 1000.
Yeah.
And we've got articles, detailing his rise to fame and the conflicting reports surrounding his fatal crash. We even have like a video tribute from a fellow YouTuber.
Yeah.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand not only what happened, but also the bigger picture, the forces that kind of drive risky behavior online, and the responsibility that comes with having like a digital platform ready to explore.
Absolutely. And what strikes me is that Exy's story, it isn't unique. He was part of this growing trend of creators pushing the limits for views, blurring the lines between, entertainment and danger. It's a very complex issue with like psychological and cultural layers we need to unpack.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Right? Okay, so let's start with Agastya himself. The articles paint a picture of a young man with a serious need for speed, a love for powerful bikes, we're talking Kawasaki Ninja, among others, and a talent for pulling off these crazy stunts. He was earning like good money from YouTube, reportedly around 4 to 5 lakhs a month, which is a considerable sum, especially for someone his age.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? This generation has grown up with the internet. And for some, the pursuit of online fame becomes like an all-consuming goal. And in Gastya's case, his passion for bikes and his, daring personality found a perfect outlet in the world of YouTube stunting.
Right, yeah, it wasn't just like a hobby or anything. This was his livelihood, his way of life. And he had thousands of fans cheering him on, pushing him to go further, faster, higher. Do you think this constant pressure from the online audience, do you think that contributes to these risky behaviors?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a factor. This feedback loop, as it's often called, where the more extreme the content, the more views and engagement it receives, it can create a dangerous cycle. It's like a digital coliseum, where the audience's thirst for the spectacle drives the performer to, ever greater risks.
Wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the Yamuna Expressway, where Agastya's story took a really tragic turn. He died while riding his Kawasaki Ninja. And there's been a lot of debate about the circumstances surrounding the crash. Some reports say he was trying to hit 300 kilometers, aiming for that viral moment, that ultimate stunt.
Right, and that 300-kilometer-an-hour figure is significant. Not only is it incredibly dangerous, but it also feeds into the narrative of a young man, pushing himself beyond his limits, perhaps fueled by that need for online validation.
Right, pushing the limits, yeah. But there's another side to this story, right? Another YouTuber, Dragger Z900, claims it wasn't a stunt gone wrong, but a hit and run. He insists Agastya collided with a truck, which then caused him to crash.
Yeah, and that's where the need for critical thinking comes in. We have these conflicting narratives, emotional pleas from fans and fellow YouTubers, a general sense of shock and disbelief. It's easy to get swept up in the emotion, but it's crucial to examine the evidence objectively.
Yeah, especially in the online world, where information spreads so rapidly. Emotions can cloud judgment. It makes you wonder if we're all becoming more susceptible to these quick, often biased interpretations of events.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something we, as responsible consumers of online content, we need to be aware of. We need to ask ourselves, are we critically evaluating the information we're receiving? Are we considering all sides of the story?
Exactly. Which brings us to another interesting detail. Agastya had a history with the Dehradun traffic police. He'd been arrested before, his bike confiscated. He even underwent counseling sessions for his reckless riding.
That's right, and it raises some interesting questions. Was this a young man struggling with impulsivity, with a thrill-seeking personality that went beyond, the digital realm? Or was this simply a passionate biker pushing the boundaries of his skill, a problem child in the eyes of the authorities?
It's almost like there was a disconnect between his online persona, this fearless Pro Rider 1000, and the real-life consequences of his actions. His father was even planning to send him to Dubai, hoping a change of scenery might curb his recklessness. Tragically, that plan never came to fruition.
That adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it? This wasn't just a daredevil pushing his limits for the camera. This was a son, a friend, a real person with hopes and dreams. And his actions had real-world consequences. That extended far beyond, the digital sphere.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And those consequences are felt most acutely by his family and friends, but also by his fans, many of whom are now pouring out their grief and tributes online.
Right. And amidst those tributes, we also see calls for justice. One blogger, Abhay, makes a powerful point. If it was indeed a hit and run, finding the truck driver becomes crucial. It shifts the narrative from, a self-inflicted tragedy to a potential crime, one that demands investigation and accountability.
Yeah, and it highlights the very real impact of this incident. It's not just pixels on a screen. It's a life lost, a family devastated,
Hmm.
and a community grappling with the fallout.
Right. It's a stark reminder that while the online world can feel like a separate reality, it's inextricably linked to our, offline lives. And as we delve deeper into Agastya's story, we need to ask ourselves, what responsibilities do content creators have to their audience? And how do we, as viewers, navigate this complex landscape of online spectacle and real-world consequences?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. And we've only just scratched the surface. So stay with us as we continue to dive deep into the tragic death of Pro Rider 1000, exploring the allure and dangers of online fame, the search for truth in the digital age, and the ethical dilemmas that arise when the pursuit of views collides with the realities of life and death. It's interesting that you bring up like the ethical aspect. When does pushing boundaries for entertainment become irresponsible? Especially when you have like a younger audience, potentially, impressionable minds watching these stunts and thinking, I want to do that too.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Content creators, particularly those in the realm of like extreme sports or stunts, they have a unique responsibility. Their actions aren't just, self-regarding. They can influence a wide audience.
Mhm.
And the more popular they are, the greater that influence becomes. It's a bit like the social learning theory, where we learn by, observing and imitating others, especially those we admire. So if a popular YouTuber is constantly engaging in, risky behavior, it normalizes that behavior for viewers.
Right, so it's a bad example. It makes you wonder if there should be some guidelines.
Yeah.
Or maybe a code of conduct for creators in these, high-risk genres.
Yeah.
I mean, we have regulations for traditional media, like television and film, to protect viewers from harmful content. Shouldn't something similar exist for the online world, especially given its global reach and influence?
Right, that's a complex question. The internet, by its very nature, is decentralized and resistant to regulation. And there are concerns about censorship and, stifling creativity. But I think a more nuanced approach is needed. Perhaps a combination of like self-regulation within the creator community, platform guidelines that, promote responsible content, and educational initiatives that help viewers develop,
Yeah.
critical thinking skills.
Because at the end of the day, it's about protecting
Yeah.
people, right? Both the creators themselves and the viewers who may be
Yeah.
inspired or perhaps misled by their content.
Exactly. And it's not just about like physical safety, it's also about, mental and emotional well-being. Constant exposure to risky behavior, even if it's, virtual, can desensitize viewers to danger and create unrealistic expectations about what's possible or, acceptable.
It's almost like a warped sense of reality, where the online world becomes more real, more appealing than the offline world with all its, limitations and consequences.
That's a great way to put it. And it ties back to that, allure of online fame we were discussing earlier. For some individuals, the online world becomes an escape, a place where they can create an idealized version of themselves, free from the constraints of everyday life. And the more extreme, the more daring they are online, the more validation they receive, further reinforcing that, distorted reality.
And in that distorted reality, the line between risk and reward gets blurred. The immediate gratification of, likes, comments, and subscribers can overshadow the potential long-term consequences.
And in Agastya's case, the consequences were, tragically real. It's a stark reminder that actions, even those performed in the virtual realm, have real-world repercussions. And it raises a question that we all need to consider. In an age of online virality, where does personal responsibility end and the influence of the digital world begin?
It's a question without easy answers, and one that will likely continue to be debated as technology evolves and our relationship with the online world deepens.
Absolutely. But one thing's for sure, we need to be having these conversations. We need to be examining the ethical dimensions of, online content creation, the psychological factors that drive risky behavior, and the role we all play as both creators and consumers in shaping a, healthier
Right.
and more responsible digital environment.
Because ultimately it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between freedom of expression and the responsibility that comes with it. Between the allure of the digital world and the realities of the physical world. And between the pursuit of online fame and the preservation of, human life.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance and
Yeah.
one that requires, constant awareness, critical thinking, and a willingness to engage in thoughtful dialogue.
So for those of you listening, we encourage you to think critically about the content you consume, the creators you follow, and the impact of the online world on your own thoughts and behaviors. Because in this interconnected age, we're all part of this, digital ecosystem, and our actions, both online and offline, have ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
It's about becoming, more mindful, more discerning, and more responsible in our interactions with the digital world.
Well said. Now, let's delve deeper into some of the specific details surrounding Agastya's case. The police report mentions that his Kawasaki Ninja was heavily modified for speed, capable of reaching speeds well beyond what's, legal on Indian roads. What are your thoughts on the role of technology in all of this?
Yeah, that's a really insightful point. Technology, in this case a high-performance motorcycle, it becomes both a tool and a temptation. It allows individuals to push boundaries, but it also amplifies the risks involved. And when that technology is combined with, the desire for online fame and recognition, the potential for disaster increases exponentially.
It's almost like a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah.
A potent mix of, adrenaline, technology, and the validation of digital audience.
It is. It's a potent mix indeed. And it's not just limited to, motorcycle stunts. We see similar patterns in other, online club cultures, from parkour and base jumping to extreme skateboarding, even video game streaming. The drive to push boundaries, to be the best, to stand out from the crowd, it's amplified by,
The online environment.
yeah, and it's like this constant need to one-up each other, to create the most viral, the most shocking, the most, death-defying content. And in that race to the top, safety and responsibility can sometimes take a back seat. And that's where the conversation needs to shift. We need to move away from, glorifying risky behavior and start promoting, responsible content creation. We need to celebrate creativity and innovation without sacrificing safety and well-being.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where the thrill of the challenge and the joy of creation can coexist with a healthy respect for, limits
Yeah.
and a commitment to responsible behavior.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from, spectacle to substance, from recklessness to responsibility.
And recognizing that the online world, for all its wonders and possibilities, is still bound by the laws of physics, the limits of, human endurance, and the consequences of our actions.
Well said. And as we move forward, it's crucial that we keep these principles in mind.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about, the media coverage of Agastya's death. The articles we've collected present a range of perspectives, some sympathetic, others more critical. How do you think the media shapes public perception of these events, and what responsibility do they have in reporting on, such sensitive topics?
That's another, critical aspect of the story. The media plays a powerful role in shaping public narratives. And in cases like Agastya's, where there are conflicting accounts and, heightened emotions, it's crucial that the media reports responsibly, avoiding sensationalism.
Right.
And presenting a balanced view of the facts.
Because it's easy to fall into the trap of,
Yeah.
clickbait headlines and emotionally charged narratives, right? Especially in the age of social media,
Yeah.
where information spreads rapidly and often uncritically.
Exactly. And that's why, media literacy is so important. Readers need to be able to critically evaluate the information they're receiving, considering the source, the context, and the potential, biases at play.
It's about becoming more discerning consumers of information, recognizing that not everything we read or see online is accurate or, objective.
Precisely. And media outlets have a responsibility to, uphold journalistic standards, to verify information, and to present a fair and balanced perspective.
Because ultimately, it's about providing the public with the information they need to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And to engage in, meaningful dialogue about complex issues.
Well said. And in Agastya's case, that dialogue needs to encompass, the allure and dangers of online fame, the responsibility of content creators, and the role we all play in shaping a healthier and more responsible digital landscape.
It's a conversation that needs to continue, not just within this deep dive, but in our homes, schools, and communities. It feels like, we've only just scratched the surface here of a very complex issue. This isn't just about one tragic accident. It's about a larger trend, a shift in how we perceive risk, fame, and responsibility in the digital age.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And perhaps Agastya's story can serve as a, wake-up call, a reminder that the online world, while it offers incredible opportunities for connection and, creativity, it also presents unique challenges that we need to address thoughtfully and proactively.
Yeah, and that responsibility lies not only with, content creators and platforms, but also with us, the viewers. We need to be more discerning, more critical, more aware of the potential impact of the content
Yeah,
that we consume.
absolutely. Think about it this way. Each click, each view, each comment, is a form of participation. We're not just passive observers. We're actively shaping the online landscape with our choices.
Right, yeah. So in a way, we're all contributing to this,
Mhm.
digital ecosystem, for better or for worse.
Mm.
And it's up to each of us to decide what kind of impact we want to have.
That's a very powerful thought. And it brings us back to that question we posed earlier. In an age of online virality, where does personal responsibility end and the influence of the digital world begin?
It's a question that doesn't have a, simple answer, and one that will likely continue to evolve as technology advances and our relationship with the online world, deepens.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the key lies in recognizing that the two are inextricably intertwined. Our online and offline lives are no longer separate spheres. They're constantly influencing and shaping each other.
So maybe the answer isn't about drawing a hard line between the two, but rather about developing a more, nuanced understanding of how they interact and impact each other.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing that our actions in the digital realm have, real world consequences, and that our choices as viewers have the power to shape the kind of content that gets created and promoted.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the tragic death of Pro Rider 1000, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I'd say it's this. Be mindful, be critical, be engaged. Don't just consume content passively. Question it, analyze it, and consider its potential impact. And remember, the online world is a reflection of us, the people who create and consume it. So let's strive to make it a reflection we can be proud of.
Well said. And a huge thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on this thought-provoking journey. We hope this deep dive has sparked some important conversations and inspired you to think more critically about your own relationship with the online world.
Remember, knowledge is power, but only when we use it wisely and responsibly.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those critical thinking caps on for.